Hello, and welcome to another edition of the DevOps Podcast. As always, the views represented in this podcast are the individuals alone and do not represent the corporation they work for. Thanks and enjoy. Richard, God, I'm glad you came out here.
I'm glad too.
It's been fun.
Yeah, so far so good.
Yeah, this is great. I wish I could work with you every day like this. I got to move to Austin.
We get a lot done, that's for sure.
That's true.
Yeah.
All right. So basically, we wanted to just have this be a conversation about, you're sitting in a very unique space, right? You got to be here at ServiceNow, and you ushered in the ITBM practice, right? Tell me a little bit about that. Tell me the history of what you got to see there and create.
Sure, yeah. So for those that don't know, I've been in ServiceNow 3.5 years, and I came in just as we were starting to put together what we then called IT business management. I was with Hewlett Packard Software before that, and in the ALM Agile space as part of that. And so it made sense for me to come in here and do a similar kind of thing with the Agile and PPM products, which we put together under IT Business Management, and launched it as ITBM. It's kind of a new name for a product set as of the end of 2016. And that was just a tremendous experience, actually, because ServiceNow was really just getting into the space. It had some PPM and Agile capabilities for quite some time, but really put a lot of effort and investment into the products, really put together something that really took advantage of the platform. And that was kind of the first experience I got of how you can really leverage what we're doing in the rest of ServiceNow. And as we say now, making the world of work better for people.
Nice.
The notion of getting all of that together in one platform and managing work in the same platform from a project point of view, an agile point of view, and all the planning that can go along with that just made so much sense. And being able to talk to customers about that. Customers that are very happy about using the platform and want to put more into the platform. Was a great experience too. So
very cool. Yeah, and I really landed some key people in the industry, like some folks that I want to get on this podcast, like Mark Bodman and folks that are have sat on the IT for IT groups. And
just an incredible team all around that product on the application portfolio management side. You said Mark, who's very well known in the enterprise architecture community and has done a great deal of work with APM, and as you say, is on the actual committee for IT for IT. Great resource to have in the platform. I worked a lot with Scott Fuller as the product management lead for the ITBM product, and when he came in, he really got about how we can leverage what's on the platform again and just make the most of the products in ITBM for people who are already using ServiceNow.
Nice.
I think that's a key thing. So
very cool, man. So I guess we should probably mention now that we are both in a new business unit that's been formed.
Right.
So tell us about you were here before I was, so tell us about the DevOps BU.
Yeah, so now as of, I guess it's been about a year or so in the making, more than that in fact, in terms of pulling together the business unit around DevOps, but really sort of got legs when RJ Junendra came on as our general manager to run the business unit. He's been in Electric Cloud and Oracle and is very well known in the industry from a DevOps point of view. Pulled the team together and with product management and the development team. A really amazing group of people helped put together the product from development to get started. And now here we are just getting ready to fully launch our product at the end of this year. Already doing a lot of great testing with customers prior to that. And of course you've been in this space quite a bit yourself. I mean, well, tell us about your experience actually since you joined, coming into the team.
I'd say I dabble.
Yeah,
I dabble.
Absolutely. More than dabble.
Yeah, no, I'm super blessed and excited to be here. I mean, I've been at ServiceNow just over 3.5 years, actually. I think we started right about the same time. Right. I started in an advisory consulting capacity as, like an ex-executive in the Inspire team. And prior to this, I was an executive at Bank of America trying to teach a 200-year-old bank how to do new tricks. And
right.
Failed miserably, quite frankly, and I don't mind admitting that to the world. But I learned a ton. So
we can get into that some more.
Yeah, we should go into that for sure.
It could be another podcast.
How not to do DevOps. No, it truly was a tremendous amount of lessons learned, and so much so that I was blessed to get to travel with like Gene Kim for 9 cities when I got here to ServiceNow, and it was literally to tell that story, like what worked, what didn't work, why did it fail, what did we see, and yeah. So since the moment that I got here to ServiceNow, I came straight from a SAFe background, Scaled Agile framework, and I was looking at all of the products, trying to learn the ServiceNow portfolio, and I'm like, why did nobody come try to sell this to me when I was at the bank? 3 of the things immediately that jump out were things that I needed, had on a reference architecture, but had no one in the industry that made one. So of course the answer was, we'll build it ourselves. Right. And it'll only cost 20 times more than it should, and employ another 100 people to try and build software that already exists at a company that just really wasn't marketing to the DevOps space. So so I'd been on a soapbox saying, we should be selling to DevOps. We've got all these products that can do these great things. And now I'm just ecstatic to see that we're finally getting a DevOps BU, and we're really going after it, and we're really bringing new products into market. So that's what we're here to talk about today, really. And yeah, so I'm super, super excited to be able to be a part of the team.
Yeah, it's a great time. It's been a long time coming, and it's funny when I think back to because I don't have a long DevOps background, more of an Agile background, I guess, but when I first started getting into DevOps at ServiceNow, it was a lot of your slides and some of the other slides from some of the early pioneers, if you like, at ServiceNow started spreading the message and getting it pulled together.
It wasn't just me. There was an entire a DevOps working group that was just a bunch of people that, it was basically, if you'd had DevOps experience and if you were also of the mindset that ServiceNow should be doing something in the space, we all just kind of started grouping together, and then pretty soon it became a once-a-week meeting, and then it was like, hey, it started to gain some momentum, but it was mostly field-led. But yeah, it was really, really cool when we saw the BU form, because it was like, yes, finally, somebody's doing it.
Well, it's one of those things that our customers like to do or do first. Sometimes in the products that we develop, they do it first, and they experiment, and they sort of get an idea of how much we can make use of the platform and what they're already doing. And we've learned a lot from our customers as we pulled this together, and thank you to them for all the help they've given us on this.
No, I think that's a really good segue too, and we brought slides because that's what we do.
Yeah. But we're marketing guys, we do that.
It definitely helps us frame our conversation. But we wanted to kind of talk today about just some of the key messages that we've been building towards, right, and that we're releasing later this year. The one that we have to put in here because we are marketing guys, and we tend to promise the world. We may make some stuff up while we're here. It sounds good and it's going to get us some follows and views. We're going to tell you all the things we can do. No, but anyway, this is a safe harbor. It's all forward-looking. We plan to release product later this year, and it could change 100 times before it comes out. But these are the visions and goals and things that we know that are being worked on, and the directions that we know we're taking. So that's what you get today. But do not make any purchasing decisions based on the information herein. And I'll let the lawyers handle the rest. But yeah, we just want to get that out of the way.
Yeah, we're adopting DevOps principles, right?
There you go.
Changes
That's right.
As we go.
That's right. Pivot quickly,
innovative.
fail fast,
Exactly.
and all that good stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk about basically. I think this podcast really came about because you and I spend most of our days when we can. Like truly, it's a blessing to get in front of customers. But I think you and I both riff pretty well in front of customers and talking and kind of working off of everybody. And you coined this term that I just absolutely loved, and I remember you kind of trying to shy away from it a little bit, but being a car guy, I thought it was brilliant when we were trying to talk about the value message of, what is ServiceNow's real value message in the DevOps space, and blah, 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 blah. And it was, lots of analysts and lots of big think was going on, and literally you just were like, we want them to be fast, not furious. And I just thought that was brilliant. And I think we've run with the marketing message a little now, but I truly can't think of a better way to say it. So give me a little bit of background on how you came up with Fast, Not Furious.
I'm hesitant about it because I'm not sure everybody knows about the Fast and Furious movie franchise. Maybe they do. There's so many of them.
Well, there's like 14 movies
now.
now.
Right? Yeah, right. But it just, to me, it really fit when we talk a lot about, or a lot of the things I learned early on about DevOps was the reason you're trying to bring development and operations together is because there's this friction between the two, right? Everyone talks about the friction or problems between development and operations because of lack of communication or because, for whatever reason, as you're trying to bring these two teams together. And so people talk a lot about friction and developers getting mad at the operations team for not moving fast enough or for holding up their releases. So it just seemed to fit to me to be fast, not furious. And I know you're such a car guy. It certainly resonates with you. So if it resonates with you, it resonates with a few people. And of course, and you explained this very well, maybe I'll let you take us through the slide here, but it's all about the speed that DevOps is trying to achieve. I mean, that's really, I was thinking earlier on, sometimes we maybe should talk about a definition of DevOps, but then again, you ask 10 different people and you get 11 different answers about what DevOps is. But the key thing is a business, particularly a large organization that we're trying to help with ServiceNow, is really focused on trying to be more innovative and do that much more quickly than they typically have in the past, or certainly quicker than their competitors, right? That's what they're looking for. So they're trying to get faster, and Agile was kind of the nirvana and the big answer that everybody was going for. And we'll get to this when we start talking about some of the where it all fits, but it's not the answer by itself, right? You need the broader perspective. You need to bring in the ops side. And so you need not just the speed, but you need that communication and the connection between dev and ops, and avoid getting in the way, if you like, of developers and making them furious. So.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I've watched the, I don't feel old, but I'm getting older every day, and in the industry now, I've got over 20 years, which just seems mind blowing to me.
You must have started when you were 12. Or something.
I wish. I've heard of kids starting
there you go.
They're writing Oracle DBA code when they're like 8 and 9 and putting away for their college fund. But no. But yeah, I think I'm 21, 22 years in now. And it's been very interesting to watch, because I started my career as a developer. And then I realized I really, A, hated development, and B, wasn't very good at it. So those were two reasons to really kind of switch. But the other side of it was I basically had run a project that I pitched to the federal government coming straight out of college. There was this Head Start Foundation I worked for, and I was like, hey, why don't you guys do like a web database? Because that was a big deal back then. There was no cloud. This was 97, 98, and no cloud. There was none of that discussion. It was just like, hey, we could put a database and make it a website, and that'll be amazing. And so we built this, we sold it to the government, got like a $300,000 grant to go build OMIS, Outcomes Measurement Information System. Yes, that was the terrible name we gave it. We weren't marketing then. But we sold the OMIS, and then it was on me to go build the OMIS. And it was really funny, because I remember we wrote it in Visual Basic. With Microsoft SQL backend. It was terrible. But anyway, it worked. But the interesting part was I had to build servers for the first time. Ooh, these mystical servers. Oh, wow. And I remember spending a huge chunk of the budget on these two big old behemoth. They weren't even rack-mounted servers. They were towered servers at the time. And I spent every waking moment in that data center. And I'm not kidding. I had a serious relationship back in college, and then we broke up, and I literally had a dog. That was it. And we built our data center, and there was an apartment complex right next to it. And I tell everybody this story. I had a network cable coming out of my office, running along the fence and up into my bedroom of my apartment, so that I could get on the corporate network from work or from home. So I never left work. And when my wife met me, she was like, "This is hilarious. You never leave work, do you?" And I'm like, "Not really."
That's why you
but yeah, so I loved the infrastructure stuff, though, and I found that I loved the servers. I loved the HBAs and the SCSI adapters and the, just all it was the gearhead of me. It was the car stuff, right? It was like, this will make it go faster, and it was just great. But yeah, so then I spent like the next 14 years of my career in infrastructure, building data centers. I was truly blessed, and I stepped up my game, and was working for a company, and the CIO at the time said, hey, we got to build this new data center to co-locate everything out of our data center that sucks and we keep losing power. You up for the task? And it was me and two other dudes. And we were like, I guess. Never done this before. Mm-hmm. And so it was great. We worked with Hitachi and Compaq at the time. This was back in the Compaq days. This is before their HP acquisition. Okay. And it was brilliant. But the reason I'm giving you all this background is that I think it's interesting when I watched the entire industry change, because we were basically it was planning and operations. I ran the planning systems engineers, of which there were two of us. Right. And then one of my best friends ran the operations side, of which there were two of him, right? For this basically $1 million a day company. It was like a $300 million small company. But it was really cool because we had like 40 developers that would write code, and we used to call it the Friday bomb, right? It's like Friday afternoon, they go to do a release, they throw the bomb in, and our weekends are ruined. And none of them get the pager, none of them get the nightmares of having to figure out, all this crap that happens. And there was a huge animosity. I mean, if I saw these people on the street, it was just like, there was no love. There was
Definitely.
zero love.
Definitely a few furious people around.
Oh man, totally furious. And then I giggle because now I look, what, I don't know, so many years later, and this whole concept of DevOps was just like, wait a minute, you want us to be nice to each other? you want us to be nice to them and work together? Like, no, like bad blood, man. We can't do it. This is like the Crips and the Bloods. But yeah, no, it's amazing. But now when you see it happening, you see what really happened in my mind was that the people with the purses, the people with the money bags that were writing the checks were like, they were sick of it. They're like,
right.
First off, Agile needed to happen because they'd fund a project and it's 6 months in and they haven't even seen the first line of code. And because everybody's doing waterfall programming and planning, and there's no visibility into what are we actually going to build. And it's like, Gene always talked about these enterprise architects that would come out of their ivory tower once a year with all these requirements and plans, and then they'd throw them on the desk and then walk back to their ivory tower and be like, good luck.
Yeah.
And yeah, all that stuff's very real. But this whole concept of DevOps is really neat to me because it's like, it really is bringing back like, okay, what is our real goal? Well, we need to innovate quickly. We need to help these companies realize value quickly. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, it's neat to see. But then we talk about the right side of this slide, which I don't think a lot of this industry realized was going to be so hard to do. Like like when I took the job at the bank, no clue how hard it was going to be to get through regulations and regulatory compliance. Right. And change management, release management, and GRC, like all of it was a nightmare.
And there are so many organizations that are under some kind of regulation, right? Whether it's finance or healthcare or government or
nowadays
retail and many other environments where there's some kind of
pretty much all of them, like almost all the G2K. I imagine it's you got your basic ones like SOX, which is just your very basic Sarbanes-Oxley stuff. Then you got every healthcare's got HIPAA. Every financial services has got the SEC breathing down their neck. Exactly. And then we get crazy that now I've started going to your homeland overseas in EMEA, and man, you say the word GDRP and GDPR. Sorry,
yeah, they are.
I even said the acronym wrong. But everybody cringes in the room because it's like, oh dear Lord.
Yeah, workers' councils and everything else that comes into running a business. It's
so it's neat because I see that like. So that brought up this big question, right? And that was the whole gap is like, how do you go from this world of guys like me who it was us versus them, it was all this head pounding, it was all this fighting and infighting, and it was it's their code that's wrong, and they're like, no, it's your infrastructure that's broken, and we go from that to it's like, oh, now we want to work together because we got to get quality stuff out, and then everybody was like, well, let's do what the unicorns are doing, right? Let's do what the Yahoos and the Googles and Wealthfronts and all these other companies are doing, and it's like, we have a problem. None of those companies are regulated. We are. So, I think that's really kind of an interesting thing where you said fast, not furious, because it's like these regulated companies, there's no option to be furious. Like they have to be controlled.
Right. And we're finding that more and more. It's interesting because the more, you've seen this, we talked to a lot of customers recently, and change from an ITIL point of view, and I'm using that scary four-letter word, but it's essential for those companies, right? And what we're hearing more and more is it's not going away, right? There is this talk about if you make the whole DevOps tool chain more secure and more controlled, then maybe you get through that and you don't need a change process at the end. But that's not the case today, at least, and not in a lot of large and regulated organizations, right? We're not hearing that at all at this point. Everyone's still talking about, if anything, they'd like to do more change control, but they don't want to put it on top of an existing DevOps team because they just know that they're going to there's no way you can put a 21-day process on top of somebody that's trying to release multiple times a day. So until you can do something about that, you just can't add controls, or you can't extend what you're doing today. And on top of that, as you can tell us the story of the customer you talked to who just is running out of capacity, right? The
change team that can't keep up.
Yeah, the change. I mean, the rate of change.
I feel like that could be insert customer here. Like if you're not experiencing it yet, you're going to at some point. You're gonna have a change team that can't keep up.
Right.
It's
and you want to keep adding new people, or I mean, even then, you probably the rate is going to get so fast. And of course, everybody's, as we saw from some analyst meetings recently, like 80% of companies or something are already deploying products using DevOps. and pretty much everybody has DevOps teams. But as we scale up, particularly our customer set, the large enterprises, they're finding that a real challenge.
Oh yeah.
To do that at scale.
Yeah, that one analyst that we met with blew me away. The fact that not only is it 80% of them have adopted DevOps. I was like, well, that's good. I'm glad the industry is making that shift.
Right.
The shocking thing for me was but 80% of them have seen no increase whatsoever in release frequency. And it's like, well, what are they doing wrong?
Right.
And then you start to see well, we've posted that Klaus Leopold video so many times now because it's so epic.
So
that Austrian guy, he's hilarious. But it's this whole idea that teams will one little development team will become agile, and then they're like, well, we're agile, and they're off celebrating. Meanwhile, the entire value stream, nothing else has changed.
It takes 6 months still to release them. Right.
It takes, we only have quarterly meetings for idea generation. We only have monthly reviews for this and that. And so it's like, you're releasing code every night, but does it make it to customers' hands? It's like, oh, no, we can't get it to customers' hands that fast. It's like, then what the heck? You didn't move the needle at all. It's like, well, hey, man, we write code fast. Great.
And I think it's just growing and growing because, you talk a lot about infrastructure, and my infrastructure experience goes back to mainframes. That's how old I am. And actually, that's kind of my programming and debugging experience.
We were the guys that we were gonna replace all those mainframes. Those don't exist
that's
anymore, right?
Yeah.
Those are all gone.
Isn't it amazing how they're still around? You make me lose my train of thought now.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean.
No, what I was thinking was infrastructure now is moving over to the development side, right? So it's even more a question of change management of what the developers are doing as they create infrastructure as code.
Yeah.
And that's yet more change that a lot of companies are going to want to keep track of.
Yeah, that's the craziest thing now is everything in not only the IT industry, but even our home life. I was just showing you my car has an app that you can do everything from your car, and it's car by code.
Right.
And it's then you look at Tesla's self-driving cars and all these new things are it's all code. It's all software features. It's all potentially buggy. That's what I fear.
I love you introduce your car to me. You say, and here's the app, and here's how you start it before I get in, and keep it cool. And
preconditioning.
Preconditioning, that's right. And then you want to charge it. Okay, I'm going to program the charger. And
but then there was the scary part when we're driving, and it sees the line, and it swerves us into the next lane because the line went through. I was like, oh my God. So that's the QA stuff that it's did they really test this, or is this thing going to drive me right into a wall?
Change probably shouldn't have made it into production. I don't think.
I'm thinking that change should have been vetted a little harder.
Some change management.
There you go.
So we still need change management is the long-winded way of saying that.
And crazier, that what we're just joking about, but is so real. It's the faster you move, the more important it is to have controls. If you think of when does a car have a parachute on it? Well, when I'm at the drag races, when I'm trying to push 300 miles an hour, right? Mm-hmm. That's when we put extra safety on it. Right. We don't take safety off of it. We put more safety in it. Better brakes, better cooling, roll cages, and a parachute.
Sure. And I'm sure there are, you make color changes to a website or something, it's not going to take a lot of controls or anything like that.
Oh, exactly.
But most organizations are doing a lot more important things than color changes on websites, right?
Right, exactly. But it's really interesting, and this stuff, we could go on and on probably with many analogies, But the reality is it really is something we're seeing is that it's been crazy to me. I'll be honest. Is some of the research we've kind of uncovered just by talking to companies that when you start asking companies, you'll say what percentage of your changes do you think really need to come before the cab, or do you think could be potentially automatically approved if we had a system that had a way to do, business logic rules that said, if you meet these conditions, then automatically approve this change. And when you ask them, they're 80% or more. And I'm like, no. And they go, no, honestly, probably 80% of our changes, we sit down and we go, approve, approve. Right. And it's the things like you said, it's a color change, or it's a logo change, or an image update, or we want to change this link from this to this, or whatever. It's all these little cosmetic UI tweaks and tunes. But hardly any of it is actually, major functional code changes. But the fundamental part of this is those change practices. We talk negatively about them. I don't know if you ever did, but I did. I hated them. CAB meetings to me were the bane of my existence. Mm-hmm. And they were a joke for the most part. We used to laugh. We're like, we're going to go into this meeting and I'm going to sit here and tell you, these are all the changes we're going to make in production this week. And you're going to go, well, are they going to cause an outage? And I'll be like, I don't think so. Right. And you're going to go, well, what have you done to mitigate it? It's like, well, I looked into it and so far I haven't seen anything that says there's going to be an outage. Exactly. And then you go, okay, well, I guess we approve it. It's like, right. Okay, why did we have this meeting? And, that's the funny part is when you hear about the unicorns, like Gene tells a story about Google, which I love Gene, by the way. I'm probably going to say his name 1,000 times, but he's just such a brilliant researcher and he's seen so many companies. Like, for every one company I've seen, he's seen 100 more. Like, and it's just brilliant when you see more and more stuff.
What I like about Gene is in the DevOps handbook, he and his colleagues wrote that ITIL is still important. You can't. Oh yeah. I mean, you can't just ignore it. What you want to do is automate it. But.
Yeah. No. There's a myth that you're talking about, and it's the myth that DevOps replaces or is not compatible with ITIL. And right. As an operations guy for years, I never really drank the Kool-Aid of ITSM. I just, I never really drank the ITIL Kool-Aid at all. Right. I wish I would have, because I wrote a blog about it a while ago that said, for probably 8 years, I've been doing everything as a service incorrectly. Not because I didn't want to do it correctly, but just because I didn't know about ITSM. I wasn't trained in, ITIL and, requester, provider, taxonomy of service in between, like none of that stuff. And to me, it was all very boring. It was CAB meetings and process and blah, blah, blah. And it was like, that stuff's not exciting. But now when I look at it, I'm like, oh, but I could have done this so much better had I actually taken a service mentality towards it. But yeah, I mean...
But tell us the Google story. You were going to tell us the story.
Oh, yeah, the Google story. Yeah, I tell this one all the time, but it's because it's one of my favorite. Jean tells me a story about a new developer she starts at Google, and she writes her first widget that's going to do something, and she goes to her leadership and says, I think I'm ready to go to production with this. So, when can I release this? And is it ready? And he literally turns back at her and goes, I don't know, is it ready? And she goes, what? And he's like, you wrote it. Right. No one at this company will know at all whether this code is ready more than you will. So we have a you break, you buy mentality here at Google. If you're ready, we'll publish it. And she goes, but I could affect every Google yeah, you could. But that's what we do here. Right. It's like we develop, we iterate quickly, we get stuff into production. And yeah, so I love that theory because, every company wishes, or the developers wish they had that kind of control, that kind of access to production.
And if you're failing fast with small changes and
that are easy to revert,
yeah, then maybe you can do that. But again, a lot of the people we work with on a day-to-day basis, just that's not a possibility.
Well, and so let's address that though. Why is it not a possibility? It's regulations, it's governance. I always have a hard time figuring out what to call it, but the reality is, you're trying to avoid downtime. I don't care. I don't care how you gussy it up. Risk mitigation, all this other stuff. You're just trying to avoid downtime because it is insanely expensive to companies.
Right.
Your market share losses, your stock price drops, your, customer satisfaction reductions, people just go into the next, everything is bad if you have outages. So we talk about it a lot about operations management and the impact that has on DevOps. But again, it seems like it's a fancy way of saying we just got to make sure that we don't bring systems down when we're releasing code as quickly as we want to.
Right.
And that's this whole, speed and agility of DevOps versus safety and control of regulations. So, and to not be too marketing about it since it's a podcast, but it's like, the reality is we're trying to bridge that gap, right? We're trying to be in this space.
To the bridge eventually.
Yeah, the bridge is there, man. I love the bridge. Yeah, your hometown of London has a lot of amazing bridges.
Was it our solution consultants lead who came up with the bridge idea?
I think so. Yeah, I think it was Maxim.
I like to
we gotta give big ups to Max.
Yeah.
That was a great idea. The bridge. We had scales before and we were balancing, but he's like, no. We're bridging this. And I was like, yeah, that's brilliant. It was either him or Zaki. I can't remember which one.
I think, yeah.
Was it Zaki? All right. Big ups to Zaki too. You guys are both brilliant.
You should join marketing.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this is the idea. We're bridging that gap between the speed and agility of DevOps and the control, right? Because you need the control. You must have the control in a regulated industry. You can't not, right? But you also want that speed and agility to move fast, get stuff into the hands of your customers. So yeah, it's a really cool place to be. And you've said a couple of times you like the way I tell this story about how ServiceNow is entering the space, because to me, I'm almost entering. When I entered ServiceNow, I was a customer, right? So I had my customer executive hat on. So two kind of unique perspectives. I was seeing the world through an executive's eyes, which everybody acts like that's a big deal. When you're an executive, you only care about three things, and I simplify this for everybody because I really think it's this dumb and this simple. Like, if you use the whole KISS mentality, this is it.
Right.
An executive only sees the world through three lenses. Is this going to save me money? Is this going to make me money? Is this going to put me in jail?
Right, exactly.
and I joke,
Those are the keys, right.
but it really is. Is it a CapEx or OpEx reduction? Is it going to drive top line revenue and get me more customer base, more market share, more whatever, better competitive differentiation? And the third one is, am I introducing risk that's going to put me in the newspapers and have me taking a walk,
Right.
either out of the company or into jail?
We see enough of that happening to people need to worry about it.
Every day you see it. I mean, you hear these executives say, I don't want to make the front lines unless
Right.
it's for something positive.
Right.
So yeah, so it's real. So I came from that space, customer, executive, financial services. And when I got here, I started hearing ServiceNow say, we're going to create a product beat and we're going to do this. And I'm like, okay, what are you guys doing? Are you just going to create another Me Too product that does X, Y, or Z and competes against the Zebia Labs periodic table of 3,000 different products in this space
There's
now?
plenty out there.
Oh man, so many. Or are you going to do something that's really strategic and really, really cool? And this whole building the bridge between these, I think, is really neat. And we can talk somewhat about it, and I think we're going to today. But yeah, I think it's great that we've taken this kind of an approach to it, is kind of solving, a lot of the challenges that other companies are just kind of ignoring or just don't know really the space. They just don't know the ITSM space.
Right.
They don't know the governance space.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now we'll admit we're 10 years behind the times here, but we're going to catch up quickly and do some really interesting new things.
Yeah, no, and you and I have had this conversation over pints even, where we wax ecstatic about the fact that, I think, and I do believe this, and I don't mind saying it here publicly, and I know you feel the same way because I've heard you say some just brilliant stuff on this, is that if we do things right and we execute the way we have a vision for, I think we will revolutionize DevOps. Like, I think, they always talk about what's DevOps 2.0 and what's the next
Right.
DevOps or whatever. But, and it may be digital product management. We've heard that being thrown around, and digital transformation, which makes zero sense from an electrical engineering
Right.
perspective. But from a marketing perspective, we're all in on it. But yeah, so it's kind of that idea of like, what could we do if we really leverage our strengths of service management and apply those same tenets towards the world of DevOps? And that's really, really powerful to me.
Yeah, I think, and a part of the unique area, and you said this before too, that gives us a way of transforming DevOps and transforming the industry is the kind of end-to-end perspective and view that we have with the platform and everything else we do in ServiceNow. Right? It's not just the CI/CD pipeline or some particular piece of it. It's everything from the initial idea all the way through to something running in production and what happens to it once it's in production, with the incident problem change, all the other stuff.
Yeah, continual feedback loops, feedback from customers, actual problems and events that are happening in real time. Yeah, it's crazy powerful when I see what we could do. For sure.
And we're talking about futures. We do a little bit of what we'd like to do and things we're going to do. We'll talk a bit more about what's coming up in the first release of the product and
so I mean we're kind of dancing around it. So let's just segue to kind of what I think. Again, the reason I give the background over, I came to this company with kind of a buyer's mentality, right? I was like, I had a checkbook. I had a big checkbook at the bank, and I jokingly say there were no salespeople coming to take my money when I would have given it to ServiceNow in buckets, and but it just wasn't. There was nobody marketing to that space. Nobody was coming to me saying, "Hey, we have this service portal that could be used as a, a DevOps portal for all your interactions between all your developers and project managers and application owners and testers and blah 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 blah." No one came to me and said, "Hey, we have this HR onboarding app that you could tweak a couple of times and make a developer onboarding." So like all these areas where I'm just like, guys, I needed this stuff. I needed this stuff bad. But what's really cool, I'll give you my take on this DevOps data model approach because. I've sat and talked about this a little bit, and so I always praise, honestly, RJ, and especially RJ and Anand and the guys over in the product teams that are actually building this stuff, because we could have, and I say we as ServiceNow like I had anything to do with it. I did not, so it's going to work, right? But they could have basically said, let's come into this space 10 years, behind and say, I'm going to buy, or I'm going to become a source code repository, or I'm going to become a Jenkins competitor, or I'm going to compete just against Jira, or I'm going to do this stuff. And, in many ways we have co-opetition with a lot of those companies, right? There's stuff we do, there's stuff they do, there's stuff we both do, whatever. But the reality is, what I think is brilliant about the approach we took is this brand new data model that they built into the platform, because we had this massively extensible platform that was built for service management. I mean, we say IT service management, but
any kind of service management,
anything. Like I used to make a joke about coffee as a service. Like if you got an API to a Keurig coffee maker, you got a requester, me. You've got a list of things that you need to get. I want cream. I want Splenda. I want it this temperature.
We had our knowledge events. We've had
the brewery stuff and
the
all that
brewery
stuff. Those things are great because it literally showcases anything that you want to run. Right. There's a requester, there's a provider, there's a taxonomy of service in between. That model applies for anything, whether it's IT, racing, whatever your passion is, shopping, requester, provider, and everything in between. But literally, you could take that to the business world and say, oh, you guys could do supply chain management. You can do value stream management. You guys can do the blah, blah, blah. It's like, is there a requester and a provider and something in between? And you go, how many times do you think I've said requester, provider, and something in between?
Yeah, I think we got that across.
You million. But what's cool for me is this model, because what we really said was, and this was important to me as an executive, because I had a ton of people, working multiple layers below me. And next to me, and people we collaborated with, people we were working with, teams and teams. We have this discussion sometimes in DevOps industry where we talk about tools. This is my tool chain. This is my hammer. It's the best hammer in the world. This hammer is better than every other hammer. Blah 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 blah. But the reality is, again, I don't know if it's a perspective thing. I don't know if it's just because I sat in a different place or saw a different thing, but I don't look at tools as just a religious discussion. It's not just Jira is better than this, or this is better than that, or this is better than this. I honestly don't care. Right. I don't care what the dev teams are using, so long as they're very productive with what they're using, right? And I think more and more that's what you're starting to see in the industry is that, no executive is going to care what tool chain their developers are using. What they're going to care about is, are we seeing the effects of Agile at scale? Are we seeing shippable code to customers increase in release frequency, increase in top line revenue gain, increase in market share, or a reduction in cost? And that's literally what they want to see. And for me, it's almost silly if we would have, as ServiceNow, come into the market, or really any vendor, and I might ruffle some people's feathers, but I apologize. But any vendor to come in and try and pitch you on something to say, replace all of your existing tools with this tool. It's like, I thought you said you were an Agile company. It's like that Agile is about increasing flow of work through the system, increasing the speed at which you produce. And then you're going to come in here and tell me, well, first we got to retrain your entire staff on how to use this new tool system because ours is better than theirs because it's got 4 different features. And it's like, oh, man, that's a tough sale. That's a tough sale.
No, it's a key element of what we have to do here from our point of view and how we can come into this space is we've got to work with what people are already working with, right?
Yeah.
You got to make sure developers can stay in the tools that they want to stay in. Maybe we can get into a separate conversation about behaviors. I mean, obviously it's not all about the tools, but
right.
And some companies would like to change behaviors and move people to different standardized, perhaps, tool sets. But in any case, initially at least, the goal should be keep the developers developing. I mean, that's what they want to do. That's what we need them to do. That's what we're paying them to do. So work with the tool sets that they have.
Yeah, I tend to always, I don't know. I always refer back to the same references over and over, and I'm sick of hearing them. But I don't know that everybody that has heard them from me. But I've referenced Nicholas's Carr's work, from way back when he does IT Matter, and then he wrote the Big Switch, which was the cloud book. But one of the biggest things that still resonates to me in the Big Switch was where he talked about that every company had a chief power officer that had to generate power, because prior to you manufacturing any horseshoes, you had to first generate either mechanical, electrical, or hydro power to run your actual manufacturing hammers, the hammers that are pressing out the horseshoes. Because there was no such thing as grid power. There was no Edison.
Back to my era, Eric. Here we go.
Oh my God.
Back to
I
when
don't
the
have an
Earth
answer
cooled.
for that. Back when I was a CPO,
Back when, yeah, that's right.
we had our buildings on the river. Oh, that's great.
Sorry, I interrupted your flow.
No, it's beautiful. But
You're right.
But yeah, so Nicholas Carr says the flat out thing. He's like, when Edison was so disruptive with his whole idea of grid power, it probably wasn't the best power. It probably wasn't the most reliable power. But his sales pitch was, wait a minute, are you in the business of making power? No, man, we sell horseshoes. And so that entire power organization over there, are they making you money? Oh, hell no, they cost us a ton of money.
Right.
They're totally drawing ours. And it's like, then why do you keep them here? I'll give you power. I'll give you as much power as you want. I'm in the business of power. I make power for a living. You could move this entire company somewhere if you want to get off this river. And his sales pitch was so disruptive because it was, you focus on doing what you do well, which is making the best damn horseshoes in the industry. And CEOs were just like, yeah, man, why do I even make power? That's stupid. And that mentality got into cloud computing. And that's what his whole thing was with the big switch, was that same thing was happening in our industry, which it's like, why do you have 1,000 server in a small company, 1,000 server data center in a big company, a 40,000 server data center, and or 15 of those data centers around the world? You know, I mean, I think it's public information that the IT budget of some of these banks is like $5 billion just for infrastructure a year. Their annual budget is $5 billion. I mean, it's astronomical to me. But so why do you have that? You're a bank. Don't you want to make money through financial products?
Right.
Like, why do you have so massive of a budget going to? And so that was sort of the pitch that was being done. But when we talk about that, we're right back to it. I keep hearing it in these DevOps meetings where they're like, keep your developers where they're productive. Keep your developers writing code.
Right.
And it just resonates right back to Nicholas Carr being like, what do you want these developers doing? You want to pay them to do audits? You want to pay them to sit in CAB meetings? You want to pay them to do change management forms, fill those things out every day? Hell no. You're paying these people top dollar. Have them write code. We'll do the rest. We'll do the rest behind the scenes and take it off their plate. But yeah, so that's that. You're. I'm sorry. I'm very passionate about it, as you can tell.
I love it. No, it's great. And we can say a little bit here about what we're doing from a product point of view.
Oh, sure.
So you talked a little bit about the data model. But the reason we have these other tools around the outside here is that's the point, is we can use our platform capabilities to connect to the tools that people are already using and leverage the data that is being placed into those tools. Avoid developers having to retype data multiple times.
Yeah.
And automate a lot of the whole process of capturing that data over time, which is particularly important. You mentioned auditing briefly. Anything to do with looking at the information from the end-to-end tool chain, and particularly from an audit point of view, which a lot of our customers are particularly interested in, is the more you can automate that process and make sure you're consistently collecting the same data on a regular basis is a good thing, of course. So that's a big area we can help.
Yeah, and we talked. I can't even. I've lost count of all the times we've heard people say that to us. It's just like. Yeah, so I mean, I guess we should tell people, you guys don't know our product like we do. Yeah, so there's this whole idea that, and actually we'll show you in a little reference architecture here. It's my own graphics, so they're terrible. But we kind of show you that like our platform, we basically, what our goal was is to build a data model where we're tying together all the data from all these disparate tools. So we're taking your planning in from Jira. We're tying epics and stories. We're then grabbing your commits from GitHub, and we're tying your epics and stories to the GitHub commits. We've got your resources from your HR information and data on resource information. So we're tying your committer IDs from GitHub to actual people and personnel in our platform because we've got that data. We then take that and we tie that to job builds in Jenkins because we've got data coming in from Jenkins telling us what jobs are running to build this code that was committed from GitHub that tied back to an epic and a story that I feel like that, what's the 99 bottles of, or no, the 12 Doves of Christmas or whatever song where you just keep adding on the
12
stuff.
Days of Christmas.
Yeah, there it is. So, you know.
And a partridge in a pear tree.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's how I feel every time I tell this story because it's like we're tying this to this, which ties back to this, which ties back to this, which ties. We should make a song. That would be really funny. We should do
That would be funny, yes.
the 12 stages
think
of
it could be
DevOps
amusing.
according to ServiceNow.
Yeah.
Sorry, we got
Watch
distracted.
for that future podcast.
Watch for that hot drop. We're coming
Yeah,
to you
maybe
live
not.
from iTunes.
Yeah, right.
Writer, producer, director.
And I know you've said this a couple of times, and I've really seen a positive reaction in the room when you say it. Because all of that, first of all, we're tying all of those pieces together.
Yeah.
And very consistently capturing the information,
Yeah.
which is so important from an audit point of view. Because again, a lot of the companies we're working with are concerned with, okay, now I need to audit the process. I need to be able to show an auditor that we took our development through a consistent process before we release something into production. And very often, and as I've learned more from you and others, that what the auditors are looking for is an anomaly.
That's it.
And just if somebody forgot to fill in a field or typed the wrong thing in a field, that generally might make it through the change process, but wouldn't make it through an audit process, right? That's something that an auditor is going to drill down into.
Yeah,
if
it's
we're
really true.
automatically collecting those things from the tools, then you've got that consistency.
Yeah, so that part it resonates with me very well, because back at the bank it was literally I'd get a report every day that if someone had access to an environment they shouldn't have, it looked like an anomaly. So boom, you've got all these people jumping on it to say, is this an authorized access request? Is this blah blah blah, or do we have a breach? And I would get those reports every day, and it was I mean, it's good, right? It's part of a process put in place to avoid risk, to keep people out of jail. But the reality is they're tedious. They're tedious processes most of the time. But yeah, auditors are very, this isn't a disparaging comment. Like, if you have 1 million records to sift through and look for anything that's broken and maintain and control risk, if you see, let's say even 1,000, if you see 900 things that look all exactly the same with the same format with the same data capture, you're like, oh yeah, this is good. You're not reading the content. You're looking for anything that jumps out. And so they see, like, wait a minute, this change right here has no information in the, what was your backup plan? What was your release? What was this? And if you don't have it, it's like, well, that's a trigger. We need to dig into this. And then whenever you hear those words, it's a long day, right? Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of effort expended by the team to manage that whole audit process, right? It takes a lot of time out of people's days.
Oh yeah, it was one of the major banks that we work with said it was 3 FTE weeks of effort to do one audit request. So again, taking developers, they're paying a lot of money, very talented individuals, very big brains, and you're saying, hey, I need you to go figure out who did this, why they did this, what did you do, blah, 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 document all of this. And it's like, I thought we were writing code.
Right.
Oh, you can do that later. We need this audit right now. Yeah, it's painful. So anyway, we're dancing around this, but the whole idea that we did at ServiceNow is we're trying to build something that will do automated audit, right? So I think that's something we should just probably throw out there, is that once we capture all the data and we make all the correlations and relationships between all of these data points, audit becomes as simple as a push and a button, right? And it's like, here's the report, here's everything that happened. The data standardization that we're talking about is the fact that when we capture the data from either webhooks or from plugins, we're actually capturing it in a standard format that you could have the auditors literally dictate to you, this is what we want to see. Captured in the template once, repeat. Every single time we get data in, it follows that format. So that's where that standardization comes in. So I think that's really, really powerful.
So we started out talking about ITIL and change.
Yeah.
So do you want to tie it into the change policies and what we do from the change side then with all this data?
Yeah, we haven't really talked about that, have we? And yet that was the title of our slide.
It's kind of a key initial use case for what we're doing in the DevOps space, right?
Yeah, so I remember you guys telling me about some meetings that I wasn't in the BU yet, but and literally we've been doing this for 3 years in the field, trying to figure out what do customers need in DevOps, and that was the most pressing, like full stop. If you're going to come into an industry that's 10 years old, it's pretty easy to just ask what's missing from the equation.
Exactly.
And like unanimously, the 2 hot button topics that kept coming up, and we had customers custom building solutions for, were automated change management, which is the ability to automatically gather data on what's in a change, run a risk analysis on it, run a exposure analysis on it, run tests, all the stuff that you need to do, and then say, hey, this passes all of the things that we need. Go ahead and auto approve this. This doesn't even need to go to a cab. And that's where we're seeing customers say that they can offload 80+% of their changes would fall into the category of being a candidate for automatic approval. So yeah, so that's what we did that in this technology that came out in the ITSM product in Madrid, which if you're not following along with our release schedule, every release is a big city and it's alphabetical. So we had Istanbul after Helsinki, we had HIJ was Jakarta, then we had Kingston, London, Madrid, New York, Orlando. Is it Orlando? Orlando. And I don't, Paris?
I'm not sure what P is. I think it might be Paris.
Might be Paris. We don't even know what P
Send
is
your
yet.
votes in here, folks.
Yeah.
Or don't.
Don't. I don't want to be the guy that was
Some
responsible
exec
for.
already decided.
Yeah. That's way above my pay grade.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point is, if you're not following along at home, Madrid, twice a year we have major releases that are named. That's to help our customers ingest that and adopt it. So we are an actual 100% agile development shop. That's my dog's collar. And basically, we have the ability to release code very frequently, but it's in order. Our customers have requested that we do it twice a year. So Madrid was earlier this year. It was came out earlier this year, and then this fall we're going to have New York will be posted, which is awesome. Right. We got a lot coming in New York.
Yeah. And so change policies came in Madrid as part of our ITSM product capability.
Yes, and change policies are that engine that take. It's really it's like a three. I always say this over and over. It's a 3-factor engine, right? It takes an input. You can set whatever input you want. It could be when a Jenkins pipeline execution runs off the DevOps tool, which is one of the things we trigger on. Self-plug. It could be whenever a change request is created, any change request, whether it's through the DevOps tool or whether it's through ITSM, through anybody. And what it does then is it does a decision tree. So you have input, decisions, and answers. So the decision tree is you set conditions. You can say if a person's committer score is greater than 50, and you can set, everybody starts at 50. If you do good releases with no bad things, then your committer score goes up. This is this whole concept of developer karma or developer FICO score. Or we're calling it 50 different things, but it's this idea that you could actually start to give developers greater access the better they are. The better they historically follow procedures and don't introduce risk, you get a better pass. You get the VIP treatment. You get that red velvet line.
Yeah. Imagine having the ability to deploy directly into a live environment.
And actually, it's really interesting too. I should throw this out. I'm continually humbled by what I learn when I sit down in front of customers. That's why I can't stress enough that it's a blessing to me to sit down with customers, because I get to see
some great conversations.
We write so much crap on whiteboards that we think is right. I mean, let's be real. We have.
Well, you might. I write very serious, important things on whiteboards.
And yours is always good. Mine is garbage. Right. Mine is just this pile of dung that we just stack. But no, all joking aside, I mean, I can't tell you how many walls I've covered in Post-its of great ideas. Yeah. But until we get out into the field and we actually ask people, hey, what are you seeing? What are you feeling? It's been a long time since I've been, in the seat responsible for getting code into production. And I don't see the problems that are caused today by different tools and different suites. And, I used to know, that's a firmware update on that HBA that causes that problem. It's like, I've lost all sight of that. And so it's kind of neat when I get to go sit with customers. But the whole point was that when we sit with customers, they tell us, what's working, what's resonating, what's not. Right. And from a developer perspective, when we first took this gig, at least when I did, they're like, our message probably isn't going to resonate for developers.
Right. I remember those discussions.
Yeah.
Right? We just focus on the change manager.
Yeah. We had a lot of people say that, only the ops people are going to care about this.
Right.
And I got to tell you, more than half the time when I'm sitting in the room, if the head of development, any development is in there, when they hear, wait a minute, you're going to take all this crap off my plate and I don't have to deal with change management again, it's like, yeah, we're going to automatically approve all that, or we're going to get human intervention, but you don't have to fill out anything.
Yeah.
They are like, okay, when can I buy this? I'm telling this to my boss, like, what does it cost? How do we get this? And it's like, wait, hold on. We don't GA till a while.
Yeah, give us a month or two.
We're glad to see you're excited because we know we're on the right path. But yeah, I've been shocked at how many developers have been super stoked about.
I'm disappointed in myself at just how it didn't occur to me that the fact that there are developers today who have to go into ServiceNow, they log in, they enter a change request, and they wait. And days or weeks later, it comes back and says, okay, now you can proceed with your deployment, whatever it is. The fact that we can eliminate that completely I mean, they don't even have to log in.
No.
They don't even have to think about
So
the change
great.
request is going to be created for them from the data that's coming from the pipeline. And they just go through their normal process, again, staying in their tools. They wait for their pipeline to complete, and it just happens for them.
Yeah.
I mean, we could talk about it a little bit, but it could get to a point where somebody needs to authorize a change still.
Right.
A human may be involved depending on the type of change. It's not necessarily all covered by the change policy, but I guess the level of risk could determine whether it's
No, and that's been
human or not.
the other side of this is the human aspect of it, right? Like I've only shared this story a couple times, but I mean, I used to dread going into cab meetings at one company that I worked for because the cab team was notoriously some of the grumpiest people in the organization, and it was real hit or miss. Like you would go in one week and you would have half the information, and it would get approved because they were in a decent mood. But then you'd go in the next week with twice as much information and be totally ready to go. And they would be like, no, we need more than this. We need blah, 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 blah. And that human aspect of like, wait a minute, last week I had half this information and you let me pass with this. And they're like, blah, 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 blah. Right? It's just so nice. I mean, I'm just pointing out that humans will be humans, but computers will run the business logic every time and be, this passes this test, or this is going to introduce risk. And it's not going to be perfect, but the good news is we're actually starting to apply even machine learning and some of our AI efforts on this. So whereas we're not perfect maybe with our initial business rules, we can start to have machine learning go, hey, we've done this 100 times and it's been wrong 20 times. Here's how I think we can fix it. And if you set this condition and this condition, you should see a result that, and by the way, I'm totally speculating on how our ML is going to work, but it makes sense that that's the logic that would run.
I think this is the exciting thing to think about what we could do.
Yeah, pattern recognition.
As we go forward with this and apply a lot of our other technologies from the platform like machine learning.
Oh yeah, and it's so easy because we have all the data. Like that one analyst that said that data is like the new oil of the world.
Yeah,
I couldn't disagree with him because it was like, damn, that's brilliant, and he's right because data it's just absolutely the most priceless thing in the industry.
It is.
It's just the whole idea with, like, maybe if we've got all the event data, problem incident data coming in, right? Now we've got all the change data tied to all the committer data, tied to all the teams that committed that data. Now I can start to make machine learning understandings of, hey, if this team commits code, we're seeing that 99% of the time doesn't cause any issues. So this team is great. Let this team have access to production. They're awesome. Or 100% of the time they're solid.
Right.
Whereas this team over here, it's Ledyard. Ledyard's on that team. This team has a 60% success rate.
Yeah.
Don't give that guy access to anywhere near production. Back him. We're not even sure we want him access to dev. Like he can use his own laptop. That's it. No, I'm just kidding.
Give him a Raspberry Pi and let him go and sit in the corner somewhere.
Give him a big title. Put him in the basement.
That's right.
Oh my God, that's great.
So talking of data and finishing out the picture and trying to get back to
back on track to our slides. We got to stay on the slides.
We haven't really talked much about the analytics side, so and that's the kind of the last piece of the picture for now, at least in terms of what we're doing around the product.
I just have to say, I'm super excited at how fun this became. We were both nervous about doing this, and I'm having a blast right now.
Cool. Yeah.
And by the way, we're at 58 minutes. You thought we were going to have a hard time
filling
an hour.
Run out of time. Wow. Okay. So welcome to this first 2-hour podcast.
There you go. That's it. We're coming out with a bang. All the information. Hope you guys are sitting in traffic. Most of the folks are out in California, so you guys will get a good.
Oh yeah, they'll have plenty of time.
Plenty of time. They'll want us to keep talking.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. So analytics. You want to talk about it? You want me to?
I'd love to hear you talk about it.
Yeah. So look, I guess I'll try and be serious. I'll put my serious hat back on. And I don't think it's just executive. From the time in my career when I was just an IT manager, literally like individual contributor, practitioner, then frontline manager. Like from that moment in my career, and even as an individual contributor, a lot of times, you are blind without any kind of analysis. Is this working? Is this not working? And when somebody comes to you and says, would you bet your job that this is right? Or would you bet your job that you're doing great? Or would you bet, you're like, dude, I'm blind. I have no idea. Right. I mean, we're following all of this stuff that we think is working. We're following all these procedures, but we have no idea. That's where analytics to me become, it's almost cheating. I mean, it is cheating. When you have more information, then it's always cheating. It's like the more information, the more data you get, the better it is. You can see stuff you've never seen before. And why would you blind yourself when you could just have when you've got all the data, like
Absolutely.
run the reports, get the analytics, get the information. And this is some cool stuff we're doing, right? So we've already kind of dropped like some hints at stuff we're thinking about, but just basic analytics of, how many this team, how many commits are going in, what's their rate of committal, are they truly agile, are they making their sprint dates, are they burning down their backlog on time, are they, from that perspective, the one that I love the most is how many commits don't have a story ID attached to them. Like, come on, why aren't you that's literally pasting your story ID into a commit. How hard is that?
Right.
Just so we can then run analytics, so we can actually tie back all of the work you're doing in your commit to an actual epic and story and corporate planning and financial planning and everything else, all because you were too lazy to copy and paste one little story ID.
Right.
Like, that's silly. But with the analytics, you can go, and maybe it wasn't their fault. Maybe they were moving fast and they forgot, right? Give them the benefit of the doubt. But now I can run it and see, oh, look, wait, these are some problems. We're not going to be able to make this chain back unless you just go tie these together in this relationship. And
I love those kind of examples because I love anything that talks about how you can help improve or influence behavior.
Oh, yeah. Culture, behavior, for sure.
I mean, it's obviously a big part of DevOps.
Yeah, you said
as well
it.
As
so
the communication in DevOps, right? It's all about being able to share information right across the teams, across the whole pipeline. And of course, if you have that in the analytics, in the dashboards.
Yeah, so talk about that for a second, because you brought it up briefly, and we didn't talk about it. And it's almost table stakes at this point to understand if you're in DevOps, but I am a technical guy, and I tend to always geek out on the technology and the tools and the whatever. But give me a little bit of your experience. I mean, you've seen a lot of this at scale, and DevOps success is not driven by tools.
No, of course not. No, it's. But I'll try and relate it to what we're hearing most often now from our customers, as we've been speaking to a lot in the few months, I guess, last period of time. The biggest problem, and the reason that people are turning to us, to ServiceNow, to help them is scale. Right, a lot of companies are trying things with DevOps. They've got one team and they're very successful, and they're updating things on a multiple times a day basis, perhaps. Doing things very, very DevOps-like, as you'd expect. But as soon as they try to apply those same principles elsewhere in the organization, or to multiple teams and trying to get the teams working consistently together, it's just a major problem, right? Any kind of scaling up of that activity. And so the analytics and the overview from the top for all of that is one aspect of helping our customers, but a lot of it is about behaviors, right? And it's you've talked to a couple of customers have talked about how do we actually we would like everybody to be on a consistent set of tools, but we don't want to force developers to move, and we don't want to make them all retrain and things like that. But maybe over time we could help persuade people to move, because if they take this path, then maybe we can go through this like developer karma. There's a developer karma path, and those developers can get more direct access to deployment environments, things like that. So I think there's just a huge amount of opportunity for a platform like we have, and an overview system that can connect to all the different pieces to help with those kind of more intangible, the softer parts of DevOps, right? The people and the processes that are such a critical part of getting DevOps successful, and actually really delivering value rather than just speeding up one team in the middle of everything else.
I love that Klaus Leopold. I won't repeat it, but he literally on this slide, he's like, we are so flippin' agile, but he doesn't use flippin'. But and he just talks about it because it's almost comical. Some of these teams that are like, hey, we won. It's
hey, we're agile.
You're not doing anything better. Right. Anyway, but no, that whole point, RJ actually has some RJ is brilliant, by the way, and that's not just me. He's truly super smart. I want to get him on here and do one of these soon, but But one of the things he says that is really eye-opening to that is when he talks about analytics, he talks about a behavior I didn't even think of, but he'll talk about one of the metrics we have in our analytics that shows it's basically issues that have bounced back and forth. So he'll see it in the graphs, and he's able to see like, why is this bouncing back and forth, and why is the wait time on this for resolution? And he'll say it. He'll say that when I look at that data, I see two teams that are fighting with each other, and they keep passing the ball back and forth. And he's like, they both need to pick up the phone and fix the freaking problem.
Yeah.
And it's like, you saw that in the data? And he's like, yeah, look at it. It's right here. This is that. They're just sending it back and forth. And I'm like, wow, that's brilliant. Like, but that's the sort of stuff as a leader that you're like, oh, you guys are doing that thing again. Stop it. This isn't making forward progress. Like, you're just, it's like 3 steps forward, 5 steps back every time. Yeah, it's pretty neat. But you can see all that stuff once you got the analytics to give you the data. Yeah, it's pretty neat. All right, so automation. So the automation part really goes to an example. I mean, we put a demo architecture in here of a demo that's near and dear to our hearts because we've done it a bajillion times at Knowledge and everywhere else. But, I think it talks to it really is a great demo just from the fact that it showcases like what we're trying to do. And I think if you take that with a grain of salt, this is kind of the architecture of what it is we've built to showcase the vision in the future of what we're trying to do. And again, the graphics aren't beautiful. I apologize. I've tried to polish it up a bit here. You like it? Yeah. Well, self-deprecation is kind of my deal, so we'll just have to live with it. But no. So the point is this is that whole thing we were talking about from an architectural perspective, and you guys are looking here, and I'll actually probably edit this to have the screen go big, but we start here from ideation, right? So you're looking at your stories, your epics. How did you do your master planning? From a safe perspective, you're in the upper left-hand corner, portfolio management, right? Then you come through and we're actually tying those stories to something we call work items in our data model. And then if you look across the chain here, it's work items tied to commits tied to job builds tied to changes. You can take this even further, and we've been doing this with some proof of concept stuff where changes then tie to incidents. We have in the data model incidents caused by the change, incidents fixed by the change. You can see event management. We can tie events to incidents, to problems, to blah, 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 blah. We've got this data, so we start tying it all together. And that's really the power of the platform, I think, is, you've mentioned it. We've been dancing around it. It's when you have this platform that's extremely extensible, is built to manage any service end to end, DevOps is just another piece of work. We joke about it, but I've said it a billion times, is we make the world of work better for people. Well, when we look at this from DevOps, it's like we make the world of DevOps work better for people, or better for developers, or insert whatever you want here. But it really does tie to the message of what we're trying to do. And so the demo that we do here is we basically show a developer working in GitHub and Jenkins, and they basically make a commit that just changes a simple, it adds a jobs or careers tab to the website. And so we're just running an Apache Tomcat website here, and it's pretty simple stuff, but it just showcases that I can go into GitHub as a developer, I can write my code, I copy my story ID into the commit information, commit file there. Oh, Alex is going to be so bummed out at me. There's a very specific thing in GitHub, the commit message. Commit message. I remembered it. Okay. Boom. I was calling it the header, and he said, there's no such thing as a header. I'm sorry. Alex is very smart, too. I'm not smart. I'm just a marketer.
Okay, we have a brilliant team.
Yeah. Amazing people. So anyway, shout out to Alex for all your help. And they're the ones that built this, by the way. So anyway, what we do is we tie the story to the commit in the GitHub. And then that basically allows GitHub to inform us that this commit is tied to these work items and these story IDs and everything else. From that point, Jenkins basically picks up the work that was in GitHub. This is standard development stuff, right? And starts the build. So it starts building the code, and it's a Java-based web application. And it basically builds through a 4-stage pipeline, right? So we have CI, UAT deploy, UAT test, and prod deploy. And so then the magic sauce that we've put in here is we've got webhooks into GitHub. That's how we're getting our information back and forth from GitHub. We've got webhooks into Jenkins, and we've built a Jenkins plugin. And so that Jenkins plugin allows us to do what we call automated change management. And so the automated change management is what segues perfectly from the last slide where we had automation in that bottom part. But what we're basically doing here is as Jenkins is going through the 4 phases, there's 2 phases that we actually wanted to make basically a change request for. One is when we're deploying to the UAT environment, we're making an update to an environment, so we need to change. The second one is when we actually push to production. That's when we're making another change to a production environment. And so what we do, as those jobs are running, Jenkins is reaching out to ServiceNow and saying, hey, can I make this change automatically, or do I need to wait? And basically what will happen is, depending on your policies, your automated change policies, Jenkins will either get a response from our server saying you've met all the conditions and your answer is auto approval, move on to the next stage of your build, or Jenkins will get a notification that says, wait here, boss, we got to go see if we can get the approvals that you need before you can go on. And
the first of those, by the way, may be seconds, right? It's just
automatic
approval.
When these pass through, it's hard to even get a screenshot in the time that it takes.
And again, in the past, this might be something the developer has manually typed in a change request.
Oh yeah,
to comply with all the audit requirements and everything else.
Yeah. Instead of they got to go to a different system, fill out a form.
Right.
That's best case. I mean, most of the stuff was done still on paper and Excel. I mean, that's the worst case. Is please fill out this hard copy form and bring it to this CAB meeting where I'm going to fill in all of your information manually into an Excel spreadsheet. Right. Yeah, those were great days. But anyway, we digress. But the point is, most of the stuff
we do that from time to time.
The good news is in a podcast, and you can do that as much as you want. This is all fun.
We'll edit this out, folks.
Probably not, because that's more work.
Yeah. That's right.
And we're lazy, like most of the world. Anyway, so the whole idea here is that a lot of these demos, I set them up different ways. Like a lot of times it depends on who I'm talking to, but I'll have UAT automatically deploy, and then I'll have prod wait, or I'll have UAT wait, and I'll have prod wait, or Colin O'Brien's on our team. He does one where he actually has it send him a notification to his cell phone, which is just leveraging notifications on the ServiceNow platform and their mobile app on our cell phones. That's a little more advanced than what I've gotten pulled off yet, but it's quite slick, and it demos quite well because he'll actually get a little bring, and then he has to approve it and blah blah blah. It's pretty neat. Yeah. But the point is, all the cool stuff we can do on our platform, we can apply that to the same DevOps chain. Right. And the neat thing is this automation, right? It's a developer makes a commit. From that point on, the developer can go right to their next story and start burning down their backlog. All this other stuff, all the change management, the data collection, the audit trail, all of it happens without them even knowing. And if they want to see whether or not their build pushed into production, they can go check, and the build pipeline will either be paused or will be going through. But for all they know, it all goes green, and it's in production. They can refresh the site and go, hey, it worked, and then go right back to their next story ID and burn down more backlog. I mean, that's literally the nirvana, right? Is that it just seamlessly continues to pump innovation out into the website, into production environment, getting it into the hands of customers, driving value for the organization, and increasing flow throughout the system.
Okay, I think you checked all the boxes there.
Did I?
Yeah,
Did I get them all?
Okay, yeah. Cool.
And on the 12th day of Christmas, but anyway.
Very good.
16 changes tied back to the job builds, then the time to go to them.
The bonus song there. Excellent.
Dropping hot beats.
Yeah, very good.
This is fun. We're starting to get a little campy now. Anyway.
You notice I'm not going to sing.
Oh, come on.
I wouldn't inflict that on anybody.
I just want to hear that beautiful baritone come out. You've got a very ASMR type voice. You know that.
You say so.
You're going to be looking that up later.
I'm going to, yeah.
The internet's a weird world. Anyway, so that's it, right? So that's the architecture. That's an example of what we're doing, automating this entire workflow through here. I got to say, I'm pretty blown away by the just what the possibilities are.
Right. And we've spent this entire podcast around this one use case, and it's where we are right now from a product point of view.
Yeah.
For customers who are interested in looking at this and talking to us. We can say a little bit more about some of the other things we're looking at. We've talked about some of the future possibilities and directions around machine learning and things like that. You mentioned very briefly about what we could do with portals.
Oh,
like, onboarding developers and developer portals and things like that. We have all of this capability in the platform that people are using elsewhere. Any other things we can think of?
So many. So the way I make this explanation is, and this is interesting because I haven't gotten this formally blessed by anybody at ServiceNow, but I've been saying it for 3 years and no one's hung me yet, so I guess that's a good thing.
Still here.
The way I talk about this is really I look at DevOps and ServiceNow as like there's two paths, right? There's the DevOps BU product path where we are going to make products and bring them to market as add-ons and features in through the store. That's our plan. We're going to release through the store, hopefully almost monthly is kind of our cadence we're looking for. And really it's just to provide as much value as we can as quickly as possible. Right. Similar to our friends over at Integration Hub where they're releasing new spokes all the time for integrations. And so that's products where we've identified a gap in the industry that we don't have a solution for, and there's not one out there. So we're going to develop products that do cool features. And yeah, we have an entire roadmap out, way out there that's got a lot of really cool stuff in there. Some of my favorite things that are out there are this idea of value stream management. Like, as an executive, how do you prove that you're actually driving value? Second question, how do you find where you've got problems in your system? We used to call this the water balloon trick whenever I was at the bank, right? And it was like,
just imagine all these bank executives playing with water balloons.
It's actually pretty funny.
Yeah, right.
Stuffy guys all in suits.
Yeah.
Been there 18 years. What the hell are we doing now? Some new guy just came in with a bunch of water balloons. Yeah, it went over like a lead balloon. But see what I did there.
Very good.
Anyway, so the idea with the water balloon thing is that if you find a problem that's decreasing flow through the system, you squeeze it, and immediately with a water balloon, it bubbles up the next problem. And then you squeeze that, and there comes the next problem. And you just keep chasing where these bottlenecks are and where these flow problems are. And it was this very squishy thing, because like the second you move, I solved this, now I just found another problem. But the idea with value stream management is the ability to plan out. We've said end to end a lot, and I've had customers say, well, everybody says end to end. What does that mean for you? And it's like, well, for me, it means literally from the time that somebody first submits, hey, I think we should have a careers tab on our website.
Right.
Well, why? What value is that going to drive for us? Well, I think if we had a careers tab on our website, it would drive blah, 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 blah. Here's the value we've identified. Yeah, you know what? That sounds good. Let's fund that. Somebody makes a funding decision. Somebody allocates resources to that idea. Now somebody's executing on that idea. It's in a backlog. Well, how do we measure if we're actually achieving the value? Well, you got to map the whole thing out, right? And so that's really, to me, the power that I've not seen in the industry. I've not seen anybody do it. I've seen a lot of people claim they can do it, but when you ask them, can you show me a full value stream, map of something, any process, they tend to go, well, this is what we would do. It would be a consulting engagement. And it's like, oh, a consulting engagement. Yeah, you can do anything with a consulting engagement.
Absolutely.
I kid. I've been in consulting a large part of my career, but you really can do anything with consulting. You can solve any problem with enough hours and enough custom work. But the cool part is this idea that we could have an out of the box. We've got all the data. We've got all these points of, if we can just then, I don't know, maybe leverage an ITBM and IT financial management component that can assign financial value or resource value to a specific piece of work that might be traveling through a system.
Again, there's so much in the platform.
You might just be able to map a value stream. I don't know. I'm just saying. So that one's got me pretty geeked out. I like the value stream management thing because I haven't seen one actually, as powerful as I'd like to in the industry. But the second piece, so I talked about the DevOps BU, right? Those are products that we bring to market where we don't have a solution. And then what I'll tell you that we spend a lot of our time doing and watch customers do is leveraging ServiceNow solutions that are out of the box and applying them to DevOps areas within their organization. And I think that to me is the two-pronged approach, right? The DevOps BU may never touch that. Or we may productize something. If something comes in that's really cool, I mean, if we're really, there were a couple customers that had done automated change management, and we said, hey, there's some cool work you did there. I think we need to do it this way, right? We need our data model to be extensible. It needs to support all this stuff. But fundamentally, the concept was like, gosh, wouldn't it be great if we could just get change management out of the way of the developers? Like, oh yeah, we've been working on that too. But we're having a problem with this. It's like, oh, well, we could probably fix that if we did this and this. It's that same concept, right? We're just talking to customers, talking to people, finding out what works, and continually looking. And sometimes the answer is, hey, why aren't you just leveraging HR onboarding for that? Or why aren't you leveraging our platform over here for ITBM? Or why aren't you leveraging this ITSM feature? And I've had a lot of customers that, I had a huge insurance company that tied into their ITSM initiative, a DevOps. And it was basically they had this idea of a master release that was a parent release and children releases that were all tied into their ITSM. And it was just how they tracked everything back to ServiceNow. And that's not something that was productized. It's just they sat down and said, hey, we have all that data. Why don't we just tie this together and leverage this for DevOps? So those are kind of the way I look at it. Is there's basically a very controlled set of product roadmap where we are building products for DevOps. And then I think there's a much broader brush where people are leveraging us for DevOps initiatives where we can provide value. Beyond the BU per se. But yeah, and people are very creative. So
That's another topic potentially for a future
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah.
is
Oh,
some
for
of
sure.
the other uses of a platform and products in
Yeah.
the DevOps space.
that's neat stuff. And I'd love to get some of the. I mean, we have brethren. We were just talking about some people in a different BU that are,
Yeah.
looking at DevOps through a
Looking at
different
that.
perspective and a
Right.
different set of glasses, which I
Mhm.
think is. It's a little scary, but at the same token, it's also like, oh, you know what? That's interesting. They have a different perspective on this, and that's what it's all about, right? Learning different perspectives and figuring out how to
Absolutely.
provide value. Awesome. Well, for our first podcast, I feel like this was useful. I don't know if anybody will listen to it. If you did, we love you and we thank you.
Yes. And let us know how you feel about
Oh yeah, provide all the feedbacks. We like the
We
feedbacks,
like the feedbacks.
and
Do you
hopefully
wanna
there
hear
wasn't.
more of these?
Yeah,
Hopefully,
you want to hear
yes.
more of them?
Let us know.
Is my mic too loud? Do you love his sultry ASMR voice? We could record an ASMR. I'll just have him read slides to you.
If you say so.
He doesn't like his voice, but I love
I'll
his
do whatever
voice.
you say, Eric.
Oh, I love it. Awesome. Well,
All right.
with that, thank you everybody, and dude, Richard, thank you so much for coming today. This was awesome.
Thank you. This
was
really
a lot of fun.
appreciate it, and love your setup here. Eric.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you. This is great.
Yeah, build it and they will come. You
It
came.
worked.
Fist bumps.